It's me again. I have to add on a little bit by the AIP, just as a background to my question. And I have an airport out in the east end of Long Island that is it's seasonal. It has a lot of traffic, about 15,000 operations during the summer. It has AIP grant assurances. Well, it was supposed to have the 20-year grant assurances at the airport, and a third party came in and sued the FAA on the grant assurances, and there was a settlement made, and 3 of the strongest grant assurances were taken away as part of a settlement. 3 of those grant assurances, the most important ones that gives that allows no discrimination on type and class of aircraft, was taking out. So it was by 5 years. So that airport at the end of 2014, those 3 grant assurances per this settlement are going to drop off. The town has already started a Part 160 study and hired some very powerful attorneys to navigate them into putting curfews and restrictions on the airport. And actually, one of the items is, can we ban helicopters when those 3 grant assurances drop off? One of the things that you're using, obviously grant assurances is really the only protection that we really have in heliports and airports for helicopters, because we're considered stage 2. Now, I know that there's work on the NPRM on the stage 3, and this is where my question is, how will the stage 3 change if the rule comes in? How will we be protected still being, because I think it goes into certification for the stage 3, but how are we going to be protected with all the helicopters that are already here for issues like that when you don't have airports or heliports that have AIP funds? Because right now, you can, from what I understand and what I'm watching, is they're going to try to ban or limit or restrict on the fact that we're stage 2 aircraft.
I wish we had somebody from airports here.
Yeah, I'm going to do a little bit of research on that to see. It's certainly nothing that, as a helicopter guy, I agree with, but we'll get with Matt and work with you, see what we got to do.
And that's a result of litigation, right? The lawsuit by the... It was a third-party lawsuit, and that was the settlement?
It was an anti-helicopter group that sued the FAA, and the settlement was that they knocked off 5 years off the AIP funds, or the grant assurances. They knocked off 5 years.
So the grant assurances are going to go away 5 years sooner than they would have.
Only three. The rest of them are going to stay.
Gotcha.
But the 3 that give us the ability, or the 3 that restrict the municipality and the airport from putting restrictions on, were the ones that were settled.
And the FAA agreed to this settlement?
They signed the settlement.
Okay.
And that's East Hampton Airport, and I don't know if anybody knows, but East Hampton Airport is the New York destination in the summer.
So
Okay.
Matt, I wonder, we seem to have a lot of questions about the AIP program. Is there a way that we can collect the names of the people that have an interest,
sure.
and we'll get them in touch with airport?
Yeah.
Somebody who can speak to this more intelligently than we can.
Okay. There we go.
Good morning, Chris Meinhardt with Air Methods. Kim, maybe this is more driven towards you, kind of with Lance's comments about HTOS. Can you help me understand how NORCES is going to benefit an operator? When you look at an installation for safety equipage, in the NORCES, it drives the operator back to Part 27, Part 29, which then drives you back to 8900.1, which then drives you down to an STC. How does the NORCE notice or order going to be able to give operators some flexibility for installations?
Well, okay, so the NORCE only applies to the non-required equipment. Are you talking
Correct.
about that equipment which is required?
The non-required safety equipage that is being promoted for installation.
Well, the certification burden, you will be able to do it at a software level, easier. The certitude that you have to do, the cost of the certification of it will be lower. Now, as far as the installation, I don't know that it's going to change I guess I'm not sure I understand.
I think that's the biggest issue is it's the installation cost is what the operator is having the burden of, or the timeline or the effects of an STC process.
Well, yeah, so I think maybe the best thing to do, if you'll put a comment in, that comment period's open right now.
Correct.
And I don't think and I'm looking at George, he knows the policy better than I do. I don't think we've looked at the installation aspects right now, is that right?
Or just,
I think there's two issues here.
Speak up.
The North Sea proposed policy only applies when the equipment is required. So let's assume that when the rule comes out, the HEMS rule comes out, and it mandates HTOS, North Sea would not apply to that installation. But if there's a operator, non-HEMS, that wishes to install that type of system, because it's not required by the airworthiness or the ops rules, they can choose to follow the path of the North Sea policy.
Which drives you back to Part 27, Part 29 STC installation.
That's a question on the Flight Standards Handbook.
So,
The intent was when required, and if it's going to be tagged as an HTOS system, that will be the STC route. But if it's not required and it's not to be classified as an HTOS, then the other path, fuel approval, would be an option.
Right. I mean, there's other pieces of equipment besides HTOS that,
Yes.
helicopter EMS couldn't have installed.
but are you getting to the point of the installation requires an STC in certain cases instead of a field approval?
Yes.
Because I think that would be a really good comment to make
Okay.
to the policy, and then we can work with flight standards and see how we can come up with the best approach.
Sure. Okay. And one more comment, Kim, and maybe this is outside the rotorcraft directorate, but FAA in August of 12 held an ARC for standardization of rulemaking and of standardization of rule. The folks that were invited to that ARC was predominantly 121 and some other Gamma and some of those types of ARSA, but there wasn't any representation for rotorcraft. Is there any comment on that, why that didn't get put out to this industry to have representation to help with our issues of installations and standardizations throughout?
Yeah, I don't know why the members were picked. I know that we in Aircraft Certification Service do have a representative on that, and I work with him directly, so I'll make sure that I feed input into it. The team was developed. I'm not sure who picked the members. I will make sure that from my end, though, that we don't forget the rotorcraft aspects. But I think it is looking more at the certification process, and so the process shouldn't vary a whole lot depending on the product.
Yeah, there was just a big piece of industry that was missing from that table.
Yeah, okay.
That's what I'm getting at, so that's all. Thanks.
I will be happy to feed that back,
Okay, thank you.
Great.
George.
Anybody else? There we go.
I'm Sam Egley with Egley Air Hall in Alaska. The meeting opened up on sequestration. I guess maybe we should close it on sequestration. I got an unusual phone call a couple of weeks ago from our PMI. It was a Friday evening. It was well after 5 o'clock. He called up and wanted to know what our intentions were in terms of any changes to our aircraft fleet for the upcoming year. Are we going to add different makes and models of aircraft? Are we going to need to do any op spec changes to our fleet? And he needed to know this by Sunday. Because of sequestration, there was some kind of a policy mandate that as of that coming Monday morning, there would not be the staff to handle any of the administrative op spec changes in the FAA. Now, it's way too early in our season for us to be committing to any changes or non-changes to our fleet, and I'm sure it's the same with other operators in the industry. I had a conversation with him that, yeah, we're going to add 212s, we're going to add Super Pumas, we're going to do all this stuff and just be ready for us when we do. But I think the question needs to be asked, are we going back to the Wild West here on this sequestration?
No.
If FAA is only working 29 out of 30 days a month, what are we doing as operators, and what are we expected to do by FAA when we need to get the approvals and FAA is non-responsive? What do we do? And operators, what is our plan? What are we going to do?
Well, the reason we're here is because we know we have to continue to do work. I mean, we want to continue to have the interface, and we're trying to take a measure of how we're going to deal with it and the options of how we can continue operational safety out there. And at that point, I'm sure that's what they were doing, is pulsing, you know, what are the additional workloads other than the current workload. And, you know, first we're starting with not doing any new certification. We want to make sure that we continue safety in the flying that's going on out there. So we don't have an answer other than right now we're still working on it, you know, what we were doing before, the time frames, that was 100%. We know that we're roughly going to be at 90%, and that's probably what you'll see. You'll see a reduction equate to about 90% of what you currently have.
Yeah.
Okay, great.
Yeah, I think sequestration is going to have an impact. We are not stopping services. We will continue what we always do, which is focus on safety first. There will be no compromises in safety. But the services that we provide through certifications and approvals may be impacted and slowed a little bit. They're not going away. But we are people in DC right now are struggling, how are we going to manage this? This is a very unusual situation for us. And by law, when people are furloughed, they are not allowed by law to work during that period. So the one day a week that they're not on the job, we cannot do that. So we're trying very hard to figure out how to do it. We won't compromise safety. So there will be a level of impact on the community, and we're trying to figure out how to mitigate that to the extent we can, but I can't sit up here and say there won't be any impact.
All right, yes.
Dan Devitt from American Eurocopter. Kim, we had talked previously about how this might be implemented, and I would be interested from the rest of the audience. I gave you my perspective on this earlier. If you take off one day in every pay period, the 10% reduction, is that everybody on the same day, or is it a staggered rolling thing? And which would be best? We'd like to give you an input, I think, from the industry with the rest of the people here. As we had discussed, if we knew you were going to be off on Wednesdays, we could plan it just like a federal holiday and do our scheduling and workarounds. Whereas if we don't know who's in the office when, it may complicate and further exacerbate what the effects of sequestration are.
I think you bring up a really good point, and what we don't know right now is how will this be implemented. What we know is every one of us in the agency, minus the AIP program, believe it or not, is funded differently, so they won't be impacted, but we're all going to be given one day not to work. I think some of the decision making is, do we just shut, for example, aircraft certification service down every other Monday? Or do we put 10% of the people off on the first Monday, 10% the first Tuesday? There's a whole impact. Let me throw it back to you. I know what I think would be easier, but what do you think? Should we have 90% service on every day, or just one day where there's no service? And I don't know how much impact this will have, but I'll take back your input.
Yeah, same here. I mean, I think it'd be better to be predictable so that you know what you can expect versus, you know, making the call and trying to figure out who's working on what day.
Okay, fair enough.
Does anybody have, I really would like to hear what you think, and I will take that back.
I'll make the recommendation because I have, under our organization, we deal with about every, and the fact that we don't have that vertical flight group put together yet. I believe it should be all on the same day because it's very hard for somebody like me to maintain your all schedule to see that when I can get work done. So if I knew you were going to take Friday off, I could take Friday off. So it's the same thing. And I think it would work a lot better for organizations like mine where I have to figure out where all the pieces are.
Okay. Any other subjects or comments? All righty. Okay.
Can I just ask?
Yeah, sure.
So I think I heard two people say they thought that the predictability of a single day just shut down was better.
Mm-hmm.
Are there others that have contrary views? I'd really like to hear the contrary view. All right, do most people think that that's for your perspective, would that be easier to manage? I promise I will
Seems
take
that
that
way.
back. We're
I'll
having
take it back.
daily telecons about sequestration and how to implement it. I will say that in this public forum, I got that
sure.
input, and this is the.
That certainly
thank you for
seems to
sharing
be the, the majority, yeah. Okay. All right, well, obviously, like I said, we have it recorded, we'll follow up. While you're in the room, a couple of you had direct conversations about specific issues. If those people that made those comments, I would stay around for a minute, and Kim and Jim are going to be here, and the other FAA representatives, and just, you ought to continue that conversation about your particular item and then give the contact information so you can make sure you can follow up with that. And I'd like to again thank Jim and Kim for being here and give them a round of applause. Okay. Obviously, we still have an active floor out there. There are people who are walking and talking, so please go down. The floor is open and enjoy yourself, and I hope you had a great HELI-EXPO. Thank you. Good.